So why did Chris Cooper defeat Christopher Walken for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars? Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the awards contender. It is another Oscar race retrospective today. Best Supporting Actor 2002. I have made videos about Best Supporting Actress and Best Actor that year. And yes, I will get to Best Actress eventually. Nicole Kidman versus Renee Zellweger. Today we're talking Chris Cooper versus Christopher Walken. Both of these men won some big precursor prizes that season. Chris Cooper won Golden Globe and Critics' Choice. Christopher Walken won SAG and BAFTA. Was it clear Chris Cooper was going to take this one? Was it possible Christopher Walken was going to win his second Oscar and Best Supporting Actor? Let's break it all down, starting with the nominees. John C. Reilly, Chicago.
You mean she needs a meal ticket? That's all I ever been, but this time she's gone too far.
So this was a pretty amazing year for John C. Reilly. If you remember, he's in a bunch of films in 2002, many of which are up for Oscars. He's not just in Chicago, which won Best Picture that night at the Oscars. He's also in The Hours. He's also in Gangs of New York. And he's in The Good Girl, which did well at the Film Independent Spirit Awards, was a big kind of indie hit earlier in the year. So John C. Reilly was coming on strong year after year throughout the 90s, early 2000s. 2002 was his biggest year, arguably. He's in so many things. So this one felt to me like a Jessica Chastain 2011 situation. Remember that year, Jessica Chastain is in like 6-7 films in a 12-month period. And she's so good in all of them, the Academy was like, well, we have to nominate her for something. Which one do we give it to her for? How about Best Supporting Actress for The Help? And that's where Chastain got in at the Oscars. For 2002, John C. Reilly, like they could have nominated him for The Hours or Gangs of New York or The Good Girl. Like I guess that could have happened, but Chicago was like his biggest film of that year. And he has that memorable song and dance number in the film. I think that's what got him in for Chicago. He plays Amos Hart, Roxy's sad sack husband, and he's very memorable in his limited amount of screen time. He had no real chance to win outside of like a Chicago sweep or something. I don't think that was going to happen. I don't think he was in third place. I think that nomination from the Academy for John C. Reilly was a thumbs up for a really spectacular year. Next up is Paul Newman, ROWE to Perdition.
You would like to apologize? Try again.
So this is a really great film from director Sam Mendes. It was his follow-up to American Beauty. Tom Hanks is the star. And Paul Newman, in his final live-action theatrical film role, plays John Rooney, a mob boss. He took in Tom Hanks's character Michael Sullivan when he was a boy, an orphan. And Michael Sullivan has a son of his own who witnesses his father commit murder. And so it's just a really fascinating story, beautifully shot and edited. Everything about ROWE to Perdition is really great. The problem is they released it in the summer. Remember, it came out in July of 2002. It was kind of a weird time to release this very dark, depressing period gangster film. And so even though the reviews were strong, Oscar glory for ROWE to Perdition didn't seem to be in the cards, especially with all of the big period dramas that came out at the end of the year. ROWE to Perdition, we all thought it would get into cinematography and Best Supporting Actor probably for Paul Newman, because he is freaking amazing in that movie. Would have been a great win in this category. There just wasn't much momentum for Paul Newman that season. Like, he didn't show up at the precursors like in person. Like, he wasn't there. He did not care, if he got an Oscar nomination, a win, or anything. Like, he wasn't showing up. And I think he got in everywhere he did just because of the power of his performance. Like, he's very good in that film, especially his last scene with Tom Hanks. I think about that moment all the time. What he says, the lighting on his face, the cinematography in that moment, out at night in the rain, like knowing he's going to die. It's just a very, very powerful movie, a powerful performance. Paul Newman deserved to be here. I just think because he had already won before, had been nominated all over the place going back decades, it just didn't seem like he was going to win. But I'm very happy he got this Oscar nomination. So well deserved. Ed Harris, The Hours.
I'm not trying to say anything. I'm saying I think I'm only staying alive to satisfy you.
So I feel like I have to make an Ed Harris and the Elusive Oscar video at some point, because this man is so talented, has been doing great work for decades, has 4 Oscar nominations, still has never won. The Hours marked his 4th Oscar nomination, still the most recent one of his to date, more than 20 years ago. He is excellent in this film as the poet Richard, who has AIDS. He is dying in his apartment, and he gets visits from his friend Clarissa, played by Meryl Streep. She is throwing an awards party for him, but he doesn't really want to go. He is not well. He's basically in 2 scenes of The Hours. He's not in very much of it. I think the big reason he was never going to win, even though he was very much overdue, Ed Harris on his 4th Oscar nomination in 7 years, 8 years? He could have won for The Hours if he was in more of the movie. I just think because there's so many people in that huge ensemble, he's not necessarily the standout in that cast. I think you would point to Nicole Kidman or Julianne Moore, who are also nominated that night. Ed Harris is one step down, maybe? So it's if we're going to give someone from that cast an Oscar, it's not going to be Ed Harris. He's just not in the movie enough. So I think that's why he doesn't win. I would still put him in 3rd place because he was on his 4th nomination without a win. He had to have had somewhat of an overdue narrative, even though I looked through the newspapers at the time in early 2003, and nobody is predicting Ed Harris. Nobody. I could not find one. So maybe he was in 5th place, I don't know. But because The Hours is in Best Picture, Best Director, it wins Best Actress for Nicole Kidman, I would put Ed Harris in 3rd place above Paul Newman and John C. Reilly. But I would say Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars that year, it was a 2-man race between Chris Cooper and Christopher Walken. It was between these 2 guys. Let's talk about Chris Cooper and Adaptation.
And I have never since stuck so much as a toe in that ocean. And I love the ocean.
But why?
Done with fish.
Now, I had not seen this movie in many years. I watched it again last night. Oh my freaking God, is this a masterpiece of a movie? I forgot how endlessly creative and inventive it is, how well acted, the screenplay, it's just so surprising every step of the way. It is a miracle of a movie. I loved every minute of it. I think it deserved to get into Best Picture at the Oscars, and Chris Cooper 100% deserved that award for Best Supporting Actor. He is bonkers brilliant in Adaptation as Jean LaRoche, the orchid thief, who is the subject of a story by Susan Orlean, who's writing a piece for The New Yorker. She is, of course, played by Meryl Streep. And for a lot of the movie, it's just a reporter-subject relationship between them. But this is a Charlie Kaufman screenplay and Donald Kaufman screenplay, right? And so this goes to some very crazy places in the 3rd act. They develop a sexual relationship. And I mean, I'm not going to go into everything that happens at the end of Adaptation if you have never seen it before. If you've never seen Adaptation, do it right now because you are in for a treat. It is just mind-boggling what happens throughout this narrative, but at the center of it, you have these 3 really outstanding all-timer performances from Nicolas Cage, who plays both Charlie and Donald Kaufman, got an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. Meryl Streep as Susan Orlean got into Best Supporting Actress, and Chris Cooper as Jean LaRoche gets into Best Supporting Actor. He is a transformation in this film. He looks nothing like himself. He grows out his hair. He's got prosthetics, so he doesn't have any front teeth, and the way he talks, the way he moves, it doesn't feel like the Chris Cooper of American Beauty, right? Of Lone Star. He had been developing his craft in a lot of films throughout the 90s, big feature films from studios, smaller indie dramas and stuff. He was getting closer and closer to an Oscar nomination. I bet he came close for American Beauty. He got a SAG nomination for that and Best Supporting Actor, and that film won Best Picture and Best Director and Best Actor. So I'd imagine Chris Cooper was in the running for that. He had to wait 3 more years. This was his moment. If there was anyone from this movie who looked destined to be an Oscar winner, it was Cooper. He's so much fun to watch. He gets to play comedy and drama. He gets to have it all. And I remember on the night I was predicting Chris Cooper. I thought he was going to take it. He had won at the Golden Globes in Best Supporting Actor.
My thanks to the Hollywood Foreign Press. You've given millions and millions of stringy-haired and toothless people a lot of hope.
He had won at Critics' Choice, he had won some Critics' Prizes throughout the season. So going into the night, it looked like Adaptation, if it was going to win something, it was going to be Best Supporting Actor. The movie was also nominated in Best Actor, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Adapted Screenplay would have been something. That would have been such a cool win. The screenplay did win at BAFTA, where Meryl Streep accepted the prize and famously flubbed a line of her speech.
I would like to thank Spike Jones.
But The Pianist was coming on really strong. It ended up winning Adapted Screenplay and Director and Actor at the Oscars. Actor was too competitive for Cage to win. Best Supporting Actress, that looked pretty sewn up for Catherine Zeta-Jones by the end there. I mean, Meryl Streep won Best Supporting Actress at the Globes. She did take that early prize.
Oh, I didn't have anything prepared because it's been like since the Pleistocene era that I won anything.
But yeah, after SAG and stuff, it just looked like Catherine Zeta-Jones was going to take it for the more popular film that season at the Oscars, Chicago. If Adaptation was going to win an Oscar, it was going to be in Best Supporting Actor for Chris Cooper. But he did not have this in the bag. I forgot about this until doing my research. I was thinking Chris Cooper won pretty much everything. No, Chris Cooper lost at both SAG and BAFTA. Christopher Walken took those prizes for Catch Me If You Can.
My son bought me a Cadillac today. I think that calls for a toast.
So here is a very inspired Oscar nomination for Christopher Walken in Steven Spielberg's Catch Me If You Can. He plays Frank Abagnale Sr., the father to Leonardo DiCaprio's character in that. And this was transformative the same way Chris Cooper was transformative in Adaptation, but kind of like going the other way. Cooper was transformative because he was flashier than normal, and then Walken was transformative because he's much more subtle than he normally is. You look at all of his villainous performances in like the 80s and 90s, and he's giving the biggest performance in the movie, right? You cannot look away. Something everybody really responded to in Catch Me If You Can was Christopher Walken's quieter, subtle work as the father. It's a very emotional performance. He never goes big in that movie. He plays that character at a much softer tone than what we're used to in a Christopher Walken performance, and it works. He does beautiful work in that film, and I'm so happy it got noticed. I feel like he's subtle enough in Catch Me If You Can that maybe he just wouldn't have been nominated, maybe he wouldn't have won at SAG and BAFTA, but ultimately it was undeniable, right? Christopher Walken had been doing such good work for decades, and he was taken for granted. Ever since his Oscar win in Best Supporting Actor for The Deer Hunter 1978, he was doing really fantastic work in a variety of films, different genres, big movies, little movies, and he almost never got awards recognition until 2002's Catch Me If You Can. He was in the running to win his second Academy Award. The season did not start strong for Christopher Walken. He's not even nominated at the Golden Globes. He's not even there as a nominee. But then he's nominated at SAG, and he wins and gives a wonderful speech.
Thanks to the Screen Actors Guild and to all the actors who voted me this, I love all of us.
So that was awesome. I couldn't find a clip of him winning at BAFTA. I don't think he's even there. There's not a picture of him at BAFTA, so I don't think a BAFTA win meant as much back then than it does now. Obviously now, winning at BAFTA is huge. But it was still two big precursor wins, right? BAFTA and SAG especially. So Christopher Walken was absolutely gaining in momentum leading up to the 75th Academy Awards. He could have won Best Supporting Actor over Chris Cooper. There was a possibility of that happening, and some Oscar pundits at the time were predicting Walken, not Cooper. Here's one that I found. Who's hot? Each of these veteran actors has a sizable following, although the buzz is that the contest will ultimately come down to a couple of guys named Chris. Don't die of shock if Newman wins a sentimental victory, but the win seems to be at Walken's back. Who will win? Walken. Who should win? My vote goes to Walken. So some people did think Christopher Walken was going to win the Oscar that night. Of course, it didn't go to Walken. It went to Chris Cooper.
Chris Cooper in Adaptation.
Why did Cooper win? Why did he defeat Christopher Walken at the 75th Academy Awards? I've got 10 reasons. The 10 reasons why Chris Cooper won Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. My number one reason is that Chris Cooper gave the most transformative performance in the group. You look at the other 4 performances in the category and they're all great. I just think you really see the other actors in those characters. You don't see Chris Cooper in Adaptation. You do not see him in this. He completely immerses himself into Jean LaRoche, and by the end of the movie, you are just frickin' wowed by his work in that film. He's much more transformative than Meryl Streep, of course. That looks like Meryl in the film. He's even more transformative in a way than Nicolas Cage. Like, even though he's got like the receding hairline and stuff, and he's not wearing the most flattering of clothes. You know you're watching Nicolas Cage in Adaptation. You don't realize you're watching Chris Cooper. He disappears into that character way more than anyone else in Adaptation and anyone else in the Best Supporting Actor category. So I think that's the number one reason Cooper took this one. Reason number 2 is that this was totally against type from anything Chris Cooper had done before. I talked about that a little bit earlier in the video. Nobody had seen a Chris Cooper performance like this. It's not like throughout the 90s he was a character actor who in every performance didn't look like himself. You look at his work throughout the 1990s and he's very good, but he almost always looks like Chris Cooper, and he's usually much more reserved as a character. You know, he might shout and stuff, but his characters always seem to be under control no matter who he was playing. And that's what's so exciting about Jean LaRoche in Adaptation. This is a wild character who will do or say anything he wants all throughout that film. And so it's just a very against type turn for Cooper. He wouldn't have been like the first choice, I think, for most people. Like, who would play Jean LaRoche? I don't think Cooper would have been at the top of anyone's minds. That's why casting is so important in cinema. When you get somebody who you wouldn't normally think to play this guy, and he just knocks it out of the park, that was Chris Cooper in Adaptation. The third reason is that Cooper had been building a lot of goodwill throughout the 90s in really good films like Lone Star and especially American Beauty. He had been doing really good work for many years, and so I think people were really beginning to notice him, thought of him as maybe an Oscar contender one day, and it's like the industry, the Academy, they recognized this was the year for Chris Cooper. This was the year we can give him a nomination and a win. If Adaptation had been Chris Cooper's debut performance, like that was the first time we'd ever seen him in something, he probably still wins maybe. But I do think something that helped him to a win, especially after he didn't take SAG and BAFTA, what got him over the finish line was the really good work he'd been doing for many years, particularly American Beauty, which got him close to an Oscar nomination. He's really fantastic in that. Like really scary at times, but there's also that human element to him at the end in the garage with Kevin Spacey that shows like the real talent and depth to Chris Cooper as a performer. And you look at his work in American Beauty followed by Adaptation, you can't get more different than those two characters. So I do think the goodwill that had been building for Cooper over many years, that did get him to an Oscar win, as some columnists talked about at the time. One person wrote, "Who will win? Chris Cooper has been toiling away for years in character roles without much recognition whatsoever. In Adaptation, he makes every single moment interesting and unpredictable as the genius botanist with a self-destructive streak." Someone else said Cooper probably has a slight edge to win. His impressive body of work, everything from Lone Star to Matewan to American Beauty, is long overdue and voters know it. His portrayal of a brilliant, toothless, swamp-dwelling expert on orchids lit up the screen in Adaptation. Let's hope the voters take notice. Reason number 4 is that Chris Cooper won a bunch of precursor prizes, like the Golden Globe, like the Critics' Choice Award. Right there at the beginning of the season, he won at the Golden Globes, got to give a televised speech, and that often helps with a person's momentum. If they win early, they win big right there at the beginning. Chris Cooper needed that victory at the Globes, especially because he doesn't go on to win at SAG or BAFTA. If he had only won at Critics' Choice and not at the Globes, let's say, it is very difficult to win an Oscar just having won at Critics' Choice. Like, it happened here and there back then, but I do think winning at the Globes helped him tremendously, and he won some big critics prizes. He won Best Supporting Actor at the Los Angeles Film Critics, and he won National Board of Review. he also took home that trophy. So he was winning a few things beyond just the Globes and Critics' Choice. He looked to be kind of the Critics' Choice that season for Best Supporting Actor. The question was, could he get all the way to the Oscars not having won at SAG or BAFTA? The answer was yes, he could. Reason number 5, I've already talked about in this video. I do think he was the best chance for Adaptation to take home an Oscar. It wasn't winning actor or supporting actress. Maybe you could argue there was a chance for adapted screenplay, Charlie and Donald Kaufman. I mean, the screenplay, more than anything else, is the star of that movie. So that would have been a really inspired Oscar win. I just think because The Pianist was winning Best Director and Best Actor, that was the most likely to win an adapted screenplay, and that's what happened. So if Adaptation was taking home something, it was going to be Best Supporting Actor. I think Adaptation was very much beloved that season. People went nuts for that movie. A lot of critics put it on their top 10 lists, and it just seemed like a film that deserved to win an Oscar, and it only had 4 categories. There were only 4 chances. Best Supporting Actor was the category to make it happen. Now let's talk about Christopher Walken. Reasons number 6 to 8 are all about why he lost. Reason number 6 is that he had already won. He already had an Academy Award, 1978, The Deer Hunter. He won in Best Supporting Actor for that film, that 3-hour epic about Vietnam, also starring Meryl Streep, also starring Robert De Niro. And so there wasn't like an overdue narrative. He hadn't been nominated 5, 6, 7 times in between The Deer Hunter and Catch Me If You Can. You could argue enough time had passed. It's not like he had just won Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars like 5 years before or 3 years before. It had been like 24 years. So it's not that like we weren't ready to give Christopher Walken another trophy. It's that he had never been nominated in between. So I think that hurt his chances a little bit. If he had lost for The Deer Hunter, let's say, I think Walken might have taken it. I think because he already had one in a very close race, that's why he lost. And then reason number 7 is that year especially, SAG did not have much crossover to the Oscars. The only person who wins at SAG that night who goes on to win at the Oscars is Catherine Zeta-Jones in Best Supporting Actress. The other 3 are different winners. In Best Actress, it went to Renee Zellweger at SAG. Best Actor went to Daniel Day-Lewis for Gangs of New York. Zellweger and Day-Lewis did not win at the Academy Awards, and neither did Walken. A columnist said Christopher Walken won the Screen Actors Guild Award, but last year only one of the 4 SAG winners went on to win the Oscar. I'm overanalyzing. I'm going with who I want to win, and that's Chris Cooper. So you think about that. Both 2001 and 2002 at SAG, like only one winner goes on to take the Oscar. SAG, of course, is very important nowadays. Oftentimes the SAG winner goes on to win the Oscar, but back in the early 2000s, it wasn't immediate. It wasn't all the time. Sometimes it was just 1 or 2 of the 4 winners, and that was the case for Walken that year. And reason number 8, one more reason why Christopher Walken lost is that Catch Me If You Can really underperformed that season. It did not do well. Like, it got into Best Actor for DiCaprio at the Golden Globes. It obviously won at SAG for Walken. But you're not seeing Catch Me If You Can get into Best Picture anywhere, Best Director for Spielberg. Tom Hanks is never nominated in Supporting Actor along with Walken. And at the Oscars, it's only nominated in 2 categories. It gets into Supporting Actor, of course, for Walken, and it's also nominated in Original Score for John Williams. That amazing jazzy score Williams did for Catch Me If You Can, I'm so happy he got an Oscar nomination for that. But yeah, the Academy didn't really embrace the movie. If they had given it like a director nomination for Spielberg, let's say, maybe it got into screenplay, 2 other technical categories. Like, if the movie had gotten 5 or more nominations, maybe Walken could have won Best Supporting Actor. But I think another thing that hurt Walken is that the movie just only got those 2 nominations, so that also brought his chances way down. Reason number 9 is that the other 3 nominees and Best Supporting Actor were just happy to be there. I really don't think the other 3 had a shot. John C. Reilly, the nomination was the win for him, recognizing his body of work for 2002. Paul Newman, it's a very well-deserved Oscar nomination, but kind of like with Catch Me If You Can, Road to Perdition just wasn't embraced very much that season outside of Supporting Actor and Cinematography, which it did win at the Oscars that night. Because Road to Perdition is an in-picture and director and actor for Tom Hanks, because that movie didn't do as well as it could have that award season, Paul Newman wasn't going to take this. I still think Ed Harris was in third place because it was his fourth nomination without a win. I just don't think he's in enough of the hours. So these three actors, as great as they are in those movies, they were just happy to be there. They weren't really competing with Chris Cooper, let's face it. And the 10th and final reason Chris Cooper was victorious at the 75th Academy Awards is that he has the most memorable, flashy performance of the group. Going even beyond the transformation of it, I do think when you look at those 5 performances, the most memorable one, the one that really pops off the screen in a variety of exciting ways, it is Chris Cooper in Adaptation. This is the performance I think that was always going to win. I love that moment for Chris Cooper. I love how he kisses Meryl Streep before he goes up on the stage, and I adore his speech.
In light of all the troubles in this world, I wish us all peace. Thank you.
Now, it's too bad Chris Cooper has never received an Oscar nomination since. This was his one and done for Adaptation. His only nomination, his only win. It's kind of crazy when you look at the Best Supporting Actor category for that year. Nobody in the category has ever been at the Oscars since as a nominee. So this is kind of a rarity, right? You don't see this too often. Usually one person has a nomination down the line, especially when it's been more than 20 years. But yeah, all 5 men in this category, they've never been nominated since. But at least 3 of them have a win, like Paul Newman won in the 80s for The Color of Money, Christopher Walken won for The Deer Hunter, and Chris Cooper won, as he should have, for Adaptation. As a writer said at the time, Chris Cooper comes through with a potent portrayal of a man torn up by acute identity issues and teetering on the verge of psychological meltdown. The believability of his character makes everything else in the movie seem possible. And isn't that what an Oscar-worthy supporting actor performance is all about? I couldn't have said it better myself. Chris Cooper in Adaptation was a revelation. What a remarkable performance. What an amazing Oscar win for Best Supporting Actor. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Chris Cooper's Academy Award win for Adaptation, and I'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.